In the last video, I had somebody comment asking me, did I follow a vegan lifestyle? And I thought this would make for a good topic for a video. So I had some conversation with my wife about it the other day, and I wanted to share overall kind of what my thoughts are. Doing this video today, one of the things that was suggested by this commenter was to look into watch a speech from this guy named Gary Yourofsky. And so I've looked up a video from Gary, and I'm going to play some of that video in this video today. And then I also did the same thing that I did in the last video, which is I went to an AI and asked them to give me an argument, and talking in the title that it came up with is Veganism, Ethics versus Nature's Cycle. I don't have any problem with vegans. I think the underlying drive, motivation behind veganism, or most vegans, is a pretty positive one. I don't see how, maybe some people, the problem they have with some vegans is that they try to push their ideology onto others, which maybe ironically or coincidentally is kind of the same problem that a lot of people have with Christians or followers of any different religion. In terms of just a motivation, it doesn't seem that the drive to be vegan has anything negative about it. The fundamental motivation is just to not cause unnecessary suffering to sentient life. And that to me seems like a really positive thing. I don't have any problem with vegans, and even in their drive to want to convert other people to veganism, it all comes from a good place. Maybe they can be pushy about it, or maybe they can be disrespectful in terms of they overvalue their own perspective and don't give proper consideration to others. But personally in my life, I haven't experienced that. That's just something I've heard about that happens. I'm sure it does, and then I'm sure there's also plenty of vegans that are respectful to other people's perspectives and way of life. Just like there are forms of or Christians or forms of Christianity that are very pushy, or different religions that are very pushy in how they try to convert, and then others that are very easygoing and accepting. All right, so when it comes to my perspective on it, my view is there's nothing immoral about eating. This is something that eating another sentient life, another animal. This is something that across, I would say, countless species, because there's so many I personally don't know what the number is, and I don't think I could count them. There's countless species that hunt, kill, and eat. And so if that was immoral, you would also have to be making the claim that other animals that do this are, committing a sin, or they're doing something immoral. And I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of bears without their fur. They look like crazy demonic beasts. Maybe if there's anything you take out of this video, go look at a bear without its fur. You'll never want to be around a bear, like anywhere near a bear when you see this. So just go look at that. And so maybe some of these different species, like tigers and lions, are fallen species that have committed themselves to these lives of just being beasts, being degraded, evil beasts that feast on the flesh of other creatures, and that there's other more moral or enlightened beings that are grazing on grass and whatnot. And I think too, I would like to preface, I think one thing that many that's a popular misconception about animals is this separation between human beings and animals. I don't think that there's much of a separation at all. That's my perspective. I think animals are, for the most part, just as sentient as human beings, or in other words, human beings are just as much animals as any other animal. And there's, some animals have higher capacities in some areas and lower capacities in others, and I think that that's no different with human beings. I think most animals are capable of moral contemplation. And so this is something that we'll get into with the AI, as AI puts forward a certain perspective on this that I would disagree with. But I think that's an important thing to grapple with off at the outset, because it is a popular misconception that people don't value animal life, that they don't have a proper valuation, and they just sort of take it for granted, or they don't put it on the same value level as a human being. I am somebody that's not vegan that also thinks that animals are sacred just as much as human beings are. And so then the question becomes, well, if that's the case, how could you be okay with killing them and eating them? And so my argument would get into, I would tend to agree with vegans about the way animals are treated in our society, and that they're farmed and harvested and put in unbelievably terrible living conditions. If you've ever been in California and driven from like LA to San Francisco, and you go up that highway, whatever it is, the 405, or I can't remember what the name of the highway is, but you go up like a 6-hour drive. When you're about halfway through and you're getting into like the valleys and whatnot, there's an area where some of these cow farms exist, and you can smell them miles before you ever see them. And when you see them, the smell is horrible. Every time I would pass through there, I would have to hold my breath, and I couldn't hold my breath long enough. It smells so horrible, and you can see the living conditions. And essentially what it is just cows just crammed together, living in their own feces. It's disgusting. I mean, no living creature, that is a torture. That's a hell. And these are the conditions that these cows are being put through, and then that's their lives. And they're given imprisoned hell on earth lives, and then killed and eaten. That, I think anybody should be able, whether you're vegan or not, should be able to say that that's wrong. And so there's areas in which the vegan movement is, I think, righteous. However, even if there are sentient animals, even if we agree that animals by and large are sentient, not different from human beings, human beings are just as much a part of the food chain as anything else is. At some point, microbes and maggots and whatever else, worms, are going to devour my body. And if I was foolish enough to go run in African wilderness, I inevitably would quickly become the food of a lion or a tiger or something. And so the point being, we're all part of the food chain, and at some point something is going to eat us. And so I don't think there's anything wrong, because it's inherent in the nature of this world that we live in. It's not something that any one person made it this way. We just exist here, and these are the rules of where we exist. Life must eat other life to continue to exist. And at some point, we are going to die, and then we'll be consumed by something else. And so we'll either be killed and eaten by something when we're still have lots of life left to live, or we will live out our lives as far as they can go, and then we'll be eaten after we die. This is the way of the world. It's in the nature of existence. I don't think that if that's the case, we can't say that there's something inherently immoral about that. I like what I've heard about Native American practices when they would kill and eat something, that they would pray and they would show gratitude for the life that they're about to consume. And that to me is the most honorable way to do that you show respect to the life that you took, and understanding that it's what's going to sustain you. And as I was talking to my wife, I think it'd probably be a good thing for anybody that eats meat, which is, I guess, a word I could side with vegans in that I don't really like that word, because it dehumanizes, or it desentientizes. When you describe something as meat, it doesn't feel like a life, And so I think that helps to isolate people's minds from the reality of what they're partaking in. And that's where I think I can agree that there's a problem and an immorality that occurs where people don't realize the significance of what they're doing and what they're playing a part of. They need to really, truly appreciate the life that they're taking and consuming. And most people, I don't think they give it a second thought. They just go to the grocery store, pick up this meat and eat it, and it's just meat. And they don't really take into account that that was a cow or a chicken with a personality and a history and a whole bunch of experiences and goals and hopes and dreams, in their own ways, truly. And so that's my view. And so then I want to take the next thing we'll do here is I want to play a little bit of this video that the person recommended me to, Gary Yourofsky.
So what has the kid been up to? Even though I haven't been giving classroom presentations and doing media interviews for the last 10 years, I've still been helping animals. Me and my wife Erica helped around 500 caterpillars become butterflies after finding out that 90% get eaten by birds and insects. So we would go outside and find them before the birds and the insects did, put them in a safe enclosure, feed them parsley, fennel, dill, and milkweed, and then release them after they hatch from their cocoons.
So first of all, I'm just going to pause it and say that right away, I don't really like the way this guy comes across. I'm sure he's not a bad person. I think that, look, let's just cut to it. Like, to me, he comes across as somebody that's trying to appease these people, and he's saying, "Look what I did. I did this. Aren't I so good? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm fulfilling our mission, so keep supporting me." He's probably making a whole bunch. He's got 135,000 subscribers. He's probably making a significant profit from this, that he's doing this, and it's a career for him. That's how. Now, I could learn more about him. Maybe I'm completely off on this, but the way he's putting forward these ideas is like, I've been gone for a while. You guys haven't seen very much from me, but I'm still vegan. So don't, still maintain your support, the support that you have for me, because I'm still, your guy. I'm still saving caterpillars, and then he's going to talk about saving skunks, saving the caterpillars. Like, so he's stopping the birds. Like, this is kind of what I'm talking about, where if this is your hero of veganism, which I could watch a lot more of him, so I shouldn't judge too quickly, but at least from this video, so for the commenter that told me to, or asked me the question about veganism, if you have better videos of this guy that you think are a better depiction of who he is and what he stands for, send them to me and I'll watch some of them. Based on this, what I'm seeing, which is the most current one I saw from 2 weeks ago, like, he's stealing food. He's stealing bugs from birds, and then he's thinking this is a moral virtue because he allows these caterpillars to reach their full form of being a butterfly without being consumed by the birds. But what about the birds? Like, you're making life harder on the birds. Like, the birds need to eat. They would have eaten this. Now it's making it harder for them to find sustenance, and maybe some of the birds end up dying because he moved a whole bunch of its food. Its food source. This seems nonsensical to me. And when they become butterflies, they're still going to get eaten. He extended some of these creatures' lives at the detriment to other creatures' lives. And this is a moral virtue? This seems very strange to me.
I also saved around 150 skunks from being viciously killed by some maniac who was catching them in cages and drowning them in his backyard because he didn't want them living in his city. Problem was, it was my city too. So I went to his house and confronted him and told him if he ever did that shit again, I'd do the same thing to him. He backed down and said he would stop killing them as long as I agreed to relocate them after he caught them. I could not convince him to stop catching them, but I was happy to give those skunks a brand new home in some nearby wooded areas.
So there's a really interesting thing that he just said on a number of levels. So one, if you got somebody that's just going around drowning skunks, I kill wasps. I don't like wasps at all. Wasps, they make these nests everywhere, and they're constantly threats. And maybe you could make the same argument for the skunk, that a skunk is potentially going to spray this stink all over you, and it gets in the way, and it's a trouble, it's a nuisance, and you want to get rid of it. The wasp isn't going to kill me, but it might sting me and cause me some pain that I don't want. Killing 150 skunks, or just killing and drowning skunks in cages, seems to be a better way to go about that. I mean, just relocate them seems to make a lot of sense. You don't need to drown them. He goes up to this guy and he says, if you do this shit again, then I'll do the same thing to you. Then that's a death threat. So this guy is getting up on stage and bragging about a death threat, and the whole way he's coming across, there's some of it I could get behind, where part of what he wants to do is get the point across where this is a living creature that you're just, no different from you. You're murdering and in a sort of torturous way. Okay, but then he's threatening to kill him, and this is something that he's proud about. But then he goes and says he couldn't convince him to stop taking the skunks. But it's kind of like if you were actually threatening to kill this guy, you would think if a guy was faced with death or with not catching skunks, then you would choose to not catch skunks. So I don't know. There's a lot about the way he presents information that to me is very boisterous, egotistical. It's dismissive of others. And so I can't say that I like the way this guy is coming across. It's more about his virtue signaling than it actually is the concern for these creatures. And that's not to say maybe it stems to something that's real, or it started in something that's real, but at least in this video, that's not the way that he's coming across. Play a little bit more of this and then we'll move to the AI stuff.
Skunks, by the way, get a really bad rap. They are some of the sweetest creatures I have ever met. They only release those stink bombs when they feel threatened, which my dogs Doyle and Rex found out about the hard way. I also recently became the official ambassador to Michigan's oldest and largest animal sanctuary, Sasha Farm, sanctuary and safe haven for animals. I do not receive any compensation from them whatsoever, quite the opposite. I've been volunteering there for around 30 years. Unfortunately, in 2021, one of the founders, Dorothy Davies, the matriarch of that place, she passed away, and they've been struggling ever since.
I'm going to pause it there. Again, the underlying motivation that veganism is sort of based on, I think, is fundamentally good, but he does to me come across as one of those that's very pushy, trying to push it on others. I just think there's a deeper perspective here that is unappreciated, and he comes across as so much like holier than thou, egotistical. I don't really appreciate his approach. The last thing we're going to do here is go through the AI. Moral implications of a vegan lifestyle. The vegan lifestyle, defined by the abstention from consuming animal products, is often rooted in ethical concerns about animal suffering and environmental sustainability. Proponents argue that modern industrial farming practices inflict unnecessary harm on animals, subjecting them to confinement, pain, and slaughter for human consumption. This perspective holds that humans with access to diverse plant-based foods and advanced agricultural systems can thrive without exploiting animals, thereby reducing suffering. Veganism also aligns with concerns about environmental degradation, as animal agriculture contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and water usage. For many, choosing veganism is a moral stance against participating in systems that prioritize profit over the welfare of sentient beings and the planet. I think that is a very reasonable argument. So I don't see a lot of problem with that. I think inevitably there are many ways that we could alter what we're doing, make better choices about our behaviors, the way that we act, and our systems that drastically reduce suffering in very sort of easily avoidable ways. Just unnecessary. That's just all profit motive. It's all concerned with profit, or primarily concerned with profit. I think that a lot of that is true and makes sense. However, the natural world presents a complex counterargument to the moral absolutism of veganism. Across countless species, animals hunt, kill, and consume one another as a fundamental part of survival. Predators like lions, wolves, and sharks rely on killing prey to sustain themselves, and even herbivores may inadvertently harm smaller organisms while foraging. This reality underscores the argument that humans, as part of the food chain, are not exempt from the cycle of life and death that defines existence. If consuming other life forms is a universal trait among living organisms, from carnivorous predators to omnivorous primates, the act of eating animals could be seen as an extension of natural processes rather than an inherent moral failing. Survival of the fittest, a principle embedded in evolutionary biology, suggests that consuming other life is not only inevitable but necessary for the continuation of species. Yet the vegan perspective challenges the idea that natural behavior equates to moral behavior. While animals in the wild lack the cognitive capacity or societal structures to choose nonviolent means of survival, humans possess the ability to reflect on their actions and their consequences. Now, this is something that I don't know why people think that they know this. I mean, nobody's been a bear, nobody has been a dolphin, nobody has been a shark. How do we know that sharks or any of these other creatures don't go through these same things? I mean, I fundamentally don't believe this. If we came from primates, you can look at primates. They look like they're thinking. One time, I'll share this. I don't take any drugs at this point in my life and haven't for a long time. But I remember one time I smoked a little bit of marijuana and I went to the zoo. And I might recommend this activity if to somebody. If you smoke weed, try smoking a little bit of weed and going to a zoo. And you'll pretty quickly realize that I think my experience taught me most of those animals in there are quite depressed. And I had this one experience with a monkey when I was there. There was one monkey in a display all by itself, and it had a tree. And I was there with a couple of people, and I started clapping for the monkey. Just 'cause I thought I'll clap for it and show it some attention, and maybe it will do something, right? And it did. It started swinging it all over. It swang on, it did all these acrobatic moves. It was incredible. And there was like nobody in the zoo. It was just us, and we had this monkey put on this incredible show for us. And so we're clapping, and then at some point, be going on for a while, and we're ready to maybe move on to the next thing. And the monkey realizes we're going to leave, and the monkey comes and gets on the closest branch to us. Gets as close to us as it can, and then gets very small and quiet, and it just looks. And it was just easy to see that the monkey was, words can't describe it. It's like unbelievably depressed. It's alone, it's lonely, it's sad to the point that if people came around and clapped for it, it would do whatever it needed to do to try to entertain and keep them around. And then when it realized they were going, it's like, who knows how long this next stretch of time that it's just going to spend completely isolated by itself. And so, as it contemplates, and it knows what's going on. So I think a lot of people vastly underestimate what's going on in the inner workings of non-human animals. I think that's more the appropriate way to speak about it. Even this guy, Gary Yourofsky, the way that he speaks, he still uses the word animals. I think it's more appropriate to say non-human animals, because we are just as much animals as anything else. So, all right, so while animals in the wild lack the cognitive capacity or societal structures to choose nonviolent means of survival, humans possess the ability to reflect on their actions and their consequences. So again, I'm pushing back against that idea. And I'm thinking that maybe, tigers or lions or sharks could be fallen species that once they tasted blood, they never looked back. And this is an immoral action that many animals have sort of fallen into, and like fallen angels. But it's still ultimately I would maintain that it's in the nature of existence that life must consume other life to go on, and as long as we're grateful for the life that we consume, then and we appreciate it and respect it, then I don't think that there's something inherently immoral about that. The moral argument for veganism hinges on this capacity for choice. Humans can opt for plant-based diets that minimize harm without compromising health. Unlike obligate carnivores, critics of the natural argument point out that modern farming practices are far removed from the predation seen in nature, involving systemic exploitation and suffering on a massive scale. Thus, veganism can be seen as a rejection of unnecessary cruelty, distinguishing human moral agency from the instinct-driven behavior of other animals. The counterpoint, however, is that morality itself is a human construct, and applying it to the act of eating animals may overlook the broader context of existence. All life, whether plant or animal, sustains itself by consuming other life forms. Plants, while not sentient, are living organisms, and their harvest involves disrupting ecosystems and killing organisms like insects or microbes. If the moral goal is to minimize harm entirely, veganism may fall short, as agriculture still impacts the environment and non-human life. Furthermore, the survival of the fittest framework suggests that humans, as apex predators with advanced tools and intellect, are simply exercising their evolutionary advantage by consuming animals. From this point of view, the moral critique of eating animals could be seen as an arbitrary line drawn in a world where consumption of life is inevitable. I think a lot of these are very reasonable arguments here on both sides. Veganism may disrupt natural ecosystems that result in the suffering or death of other of non-human animals. And that's an important point to make, that there's in some way there's no way around it. You can't have no negative consequence in your effort to go consume and sustain yourself, that you have no negative consequence. Suffering is going to be inherent in the consumption of life, or particularly in the consumption of non-human animals. Suffering is going to be inherent in that. And so where do you draw the line? The line, to some degree, is arbitrary. But I think probably we should be able to draw a line somewhere. In conclusion, the moral implications of a vegan lifestyle are deeply tied to human capacity for ethical reflection and the realities of the natural world. Veganism represents a deliberate choice to reduce harm and challenge exploitative systems grounded in the belief that humans can transcend instinctual behaviors. However, the universality of predation and consumption in nature suggests that eating animals is not inherently immoral, but rather a part of the life cycle that sustains all species. The debate ultimately hinges on whether human moral agency should override natural instincts or accept them as part of our place in the food chain. Both perspectives offer compelling insights, leaving the question open to individual interpretation and values. I think the last line here is maybe the most important, and it's a great line delivered by the AI, that we don't necessarily know the right or wrong answer to this, and that there are good arguments on both sides, and that this thought is something that could be applied to so many of the different divisive issues that we face. We need to remember the contentious issues are often contentious because they're difficult, because they have good arguments for both sides. That's why they're controversial, because they're difficult issues. We shouldn't condemn each other for having perspective on a difficult issue. Instead, we need to be patient and helpful with each other and honest with each other as we try to figure out enough about what's going on with these particular situations. But in the meantime, it's something that we're going to have to discuss and work through, and we don't need to hate each other while we're going through that process. I can say to vegans who might look at me and say, condemn me for eating non-human animals, and say I can still appreciate their point of view. I can say I'm grateful for that about who they are. Not only in that they're going to do what they can to decrease suffering for non-human animals. If that's truly their drive, the core of their drive, that will apply itself in everything they do. It almost certainly would reflect itself in how they treat human beings as well. It's just a aware, more sensitive way of moving through the world where you're trying to make sure that you don't cause unnecessary suffering to others. I just think there's not something inherently morally wrong with the consumption of animals, with the killing and consumption of animals. I think it's a gruesome part of the nature of existence, of the place that we live in. Things are born with teeth, and I guess that's where I'll leave it is. I've got a song that has a line. The song's called Madness, and a line in the song says, "Can you find a thing called innocence in a world full of teeth? If we aren't meant to crush and break things down and consume them, why would we have teeth?" Animals are born with teeth that are clearly designed, evolved to eat other animals. So thank you for watching the video. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, or you agree with anything I'm saying, if you want to throw more resources at me, throw it in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.